Oh, look at this. Some Sunday afternoon hoops as the Sixers travel to Chicago to take on the 10-14 Bulls. And I bring up the 10-14 Bulls, but the Sixers are 6-15. Let's see if they can get a little bit closer by picking up a W this afternoon. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers pregame show presented by Coors Light. Visit CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball to get Coors Light delivered or to find a store near you. A busy afternoon in Philadelphia sports. Joining us, all of you, appreciate it. Derek Bodner. Kyle will be with us shortly. He'll be with us for the 1 o'clock watch along. So yes, you're here with us now to get ready for the Sixers game. We know what's going on today. It's a busy afternoon in Philadelphia sports with both basketball and football. Join us both. Have us all on laptops, computers, smartphones, TV. Have us all on while the Birds and the Sixers are playing and the watch-along is going on. We'll have Kyle at 1 o'clock for the watch-along. Derek, I'm Devon Givens, and we have the GOAT, as Derek called her, as we get ready to start off the show. Bree is back, everybody, so say what's up to Bree, and we'll see if someone else returns too. We'll talk about him shortly.
We actually got word for that. Initially, Devon put Joel Embiid as the first point on our docket.
Yep.
I said, no, maybe push that back later just so we can be sure that we will get confirmation of the starting lineup. Confirmation came out earlier, right as we started the show. The Sixers tweeted out their starting lineup. Joel Embiid will be in that starting lineup. He will be joined by, obviously, Tyrese Maxey, then Kelly Oubre, Paul George, and Gershon.
Yabusele gets the start at the 4. That's interesting. I like it.
I like it. I'm still Team McCain as the shooting guard.
Oh, no, 100%.
But we will get to that.
But look, it's good to have different options as we start things off here on the pregame show with Joel Embiid getting the start. Tyrese Maxey looking to get back on track, as we've talked about a ton, getting him back on track. And, I mean, Derek, with Joel Embiid back, we understand that Tyrese Maxey is generally at his best when the big fella is right next to him on the floor.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that you can take from Joel Embiid being back in the lineup. Obviously, when you're an MVP caliber player, you tend to impact the game in a multitude of ways. But I think maybe because typically when Joel Embiid comes back, there's a lot of rust. He's got to get back into a rhythm. Mm-hmm. He's got to get back into basketball shape. He just seems off. The jumper isn't always there when he first comes back. But the one thing he will do is create space for Tyrese Maxey and be able to run that two-man game with Maxey. And Maxey has obviously been struggling mightily here over the last couple of games. It's been a topic of every post-game show that we do, frequently to the scorn of a lot of the listeners in the chat. But he has not been anywhere near himself. And just having a staple play that they can go back to over and over and over again. And this is one thing where I sort of wish Nick, maybe the only thing outside of the shorthanded stuff, but the one thing where I sort of wish Nick Nurse was a little bit more like Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, when they had a play that was working, they would run that play 6, 7, 8 times in a row. I want to see that two-man game, that dribble handoff over and over and over again, even if it's not necessarily working. I just need something to get Tyrese Maxey some space, something to get Tyrese Maxey back into his rhythm, because they are not going anywhere unless Tyrese Maxey plays more like he did over the last 3 years and less likely like he has over the first 21 games of the season.
Bleed the play dry. And look, Chicago will give you some points. They scored 123 in their loss on Friday. They also played. They took on the Pacers at home. They lost 132-123. They did post 6 players in double figures. Indiana also posted a 5+ in double figures as well in their win. And this defense will give up some points. So if you look at their lineup of who they have, Nic Vucevic at the 5 spot, not known as a defender. He was questionable. He is available to go. Lonzo Ball coming off the bench, available, ready to go as well. Same thing for Kobe White. These are not defensive-minded players. So the Sixers have an opportunity here against a bad defensive team in the Chicago Bulls where you can actually get some things going. Get your rhythm going. Get that continuity back. It may not happen all in one game, but it's a very good start with Joel Embiid coming back against this particular team that will give you an opportunity to put some points on the board. So when you look opposite of Tyrese Maxey this afternoon, and whether it's Ayo Dosunmu or some other player that they have trying to defend him, none of them can slow him down. It's up to him as to who he's going to be, the type of player that he's going to be this afternoon, and going out there and getting it done on the offensive end, something that we, quite frankly, haven't seen over the last couple of games. It's been a tough source of conversation with the back and forth with the fan base and us here as we discuss it. But having Joel Embiid back, having him out there on the floor to take some of that attention, this is not a Joel Embiid of, okay, I'm Chicago, let's see what Joel Embiid has as he's missed all these games. No, this is Joel Embiid of, he's Joel Embiid, I'm still going to have to throw some sort of double team at him, and someone's going to get an open look, and it's probably going to be Maxey and others. So Maxey needs to take advantage of that this afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at this Chicago team, they're 27th in the league in defense. Pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times early season, and we're not really early season anymore, we're a quarter of the way through, but you'll look at like 3-point shooting. Like maybe the other team, the opponent they're playing against is getting lucky. No, the opponents are shooting just 35% from 3 against the Bulls. They are a bad team up and down the roster defensively. Whether it's Kobe White, Vucevic, like you mentioned, Lavine, Giddey, they are all subpar to really bad defenders. You will have matchups to exploit. And I think if you're looking at Joel Embiid for this game, you don't need Joel Embiid to try to be Superman Joel Embiid. You don't need him to try to come back and be MVP caliber Joel Embiid, because they will, like I said, they will have matchups, whether it's Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain off the bench. They will have plenty of matchups to exploit. You need Joel Embiid to be a threat. You need him to be a dribble handoff partner. You need him to attract attention. You don't need him to try to do everything by himself. So I'm real interested to see his mindset coming in here. I'm interested to see how that will, like I said, the number one thing I'm taking from this game is I need Tyrese Maxey back on track.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can debate why he has been subpar, but he has been subpar for pretty much the entire season. He's shooting 40% from the field. He's shooting sub 30% from 3-point range. Obviously, a lot more of those are off the dribble than they were in previous years. More of them are contested, but he is missing very open shots as well. And you just need him to get back to where he has been, and that starts tonight.
No, it absolutely does. And looking at that, so now let's shift to Joel Embiid a little bit. As you said, you don't expect him to be all-star Joel Embiid and to be that type of guy where he's just going to come right back and post a 30 spot tonight, this afternoon, with 5 blocks and you know, the line that we are accustomed to seeing from him when it comes to Joel Embiid and the MVP that he is. What are you looking for from him today? We haven't heard yet of anything about minute restriction, but we would imagine that he is going to be on one.
I'm pretty sure Sixers Adam said he would be on one, but they didn't know exactly what it was.
Okay, so what are you expecting from him this afternoon?
Honestly, I have no idea. He hasn't played basketball in quite a long time, and he's barely played basketball all season. So I don't know what you're going to get out of him. You know, I'm going to be obviously looking at how well he moves, how well he changes direction. A lot of that's probably going to come down more on the defensive side of the court because that's going to be a true measure of where that knee is at. So I think for the most part, what I'm expecting is to overanalyze every single movement he makes to try to assess his health situation. But outside of that, offensively is where I think he needs to, you know, I don't want to say rein it in, but just play within the flow. Like he will get that shot. He doesn't need to be trying to drive every time he has, although Vooch will give you driving lanes. He doesn't need to try to be doing everything by himself. Just play within the flow, work with Tyrese Maxey, try to get guys open shots, read the double teams as they come, and go from there.
I'm curious to see how much he defers. Sometimes when he comes back like this, especially with someone like Paul George, where we saw George, and we'll talk about him too, is that he had the 21, 9 assists. He looked pretty good when you guys joined post-game. We talked about how he looked like Paul George, even though it wasn't explosive 27 or 28, and we've seen his career high, Sixers career high is 29.
And he mentioned that after the game where he's like, look, with the brace I'm playing at, like I don't have the lateral side-to-side speed that I think I will when that comes off. So he's trying to be a little more direct, a little more decisive, play within himself a little more. He, you know, pretty much hinted that he is a little frustrated by the brace, but he thinks it might be helping him slow down a little bit.
Right. So with that, even though he did not go out there and again drop 27, drop 28, somewhere along those lines, but what he did is he came out there and he gave you a professional game of what Paul George does to impact it the way that he did. The turnovers are always fun because he zips these passes, man, and you're like, yo, what are you doing? Or dribbling.
Some of those outlets, man, like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? But then he drops off 9 assists where he probably should have had, outside of the zips, he probably should have had 4 more assists because of the passes that he put on in the hands of others.
And he had a couple of hockey assists, especially the one I'm thinking of, the only 3 that Tyrese made, where he kicked it to the corner. I think it was it Yabu in the corner? Somebody in the corner, and then they kicked it over to Maxey on the wing.
Yes, nice bounce pass, too. I like the fact that he did that.
His overall floor game has been really good, and I wrote about this a little bit over the weekend I wrote like 3,000 words on it, over at allphly.com, just about the stabilizing presence. Oh, look who decided to show up today. Just telling Devon, this is the only time that that Kyle has been quiet for the entire 14 months or so that we have been doing this show.
And we were gonna let him. We were gonna let him just sit there and wait until we got the watch along going.
45 minutes to climb the 7 sets of stairs. Do a show here.
We are all getting our cardio in.
You should have saw when Fran came in and Bree and I were sitting in here. You could just hear the breathing, the mouth breathing coming from Fran.
So I gave myself a minute there to collect myself before I came in here.
Well, good to see you, man. Great to have both you and Bree here with us today. And Kyle, the news, as we were just talking about Paul George, his impact with KJ Martin, who we'll talk about
Kyle
here shortly.
took a break midway up the stairs to tweet out that Joel Embiid is back.
Right.
We won't say where I was when I sent it.
But he's back.
The post.
He's
yes.
back. So it's good. We have a watch along at 1 o'clock for this game for the Sixers and the Bulls. Great that we have a watch along when he's playing.
Yes. And so, I mean, one of the first interesting things about him coming back is that Yabusele stayed in the starting lineup. I was not.
So did another player.
Yeah. The Oubre thing I have kind of made my peace with, at least in the short term. But the Yabusele thing is interesting in part because KJ Martin has played really well, and I thought he might be in consideration here, where you're trying to balance the floor spacing, the shooting that Yabu has given you with the dynamic athleticism and what KJ has brought to the table. But I guess the first thing we're going to have to see is, how do they manage Joel's minutes, right? We have heard it 100,000 times. The ramp up and his cardio.
Ramp
and all
up,
that.
baby.
Like, I know we're all sick of hearing it. I am certainly sick of saying it and hearing it from people with the organization. But how much do they use him? Who do they pair him with in those bench groups? I think we've seen more of Paul George and Maxey being staggered when they've been able to get them both on the floor. So. Yeah, I'm hoping we get a lot of Jared McCain, Joel Embiid minutes would be my first thing, and it would be easier to do that if he was starting over Kelly Oubre, but here we are.
Well, and now that you're back to having Embiid in the lineup, and you're back to having a actually pretty positionally large front court with Paul George, Yabu, and Embiid, I think you can get away with McCain a little more in the backcourt than you could when Yabu was starting at center.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this a little bit over the weekend, where I think McCain being in the starting lineup can make it easier for Maxey to get back to being the best version of himself.
100%.
In part because McCain can take some of that shot creation duties and Maxey can play a little bit more off ball, but also in part because it's just another guy who's shooting and decision-making you trust, so it makes it a little bit harder for the other team to trap Tyrese because they're not willing to live with that 4-on-3 behind them. So this whole Kelly thing flummoxes me a little bit, quite frankly. I get that
it's just the extra defensive help.
It's the defensive help, and he's one of your 2 or 3 best perimeter defenders. I get that. But with Maxey struggling so much, and with shooting being so important around Joel, and with how consistent Jared McCain has been, I think he is clearly the option there.
I will say, Kelly has, over the last week and a half,
he's been playing the best basketball this season.
He's been playing very good, and frankly, on both ends of the floor. And I think the thing that has been really important for me on offense is that he's finally settling into a role, right, where there's not a lot of Kelly going off script, jacking up shots. There's a contested 3 here and there, but that's been a product of where the offense is and the type of possession they've had. Whereas early in the year, we all saw it, right, where the pecking order was all out of whack, and we're seeing Kelly get up, sometimes 17, 18 shots. He's driving a ton, and that's, he can get to the free throw line, but just doing a little too much. And I think he has settled into more of that role player archetype. On top of, he's playing really hard on defense, and he's been part of that group on that end of the floor that's been able to keep them afloat. And so I guess if you're trying to figure out or get inside Nick's brain, it's not just that Kelly is playing well recently.
You don't want to bench him while he's...
You don't want to do that. And it's also with Yabu out there, even though Yabu has looked pretty good as a 4, if you put McCain out there, you could potentially end up in some situations where there are 3 guys that are problematic in certain switches, whereas this gives you a little bit more protection on the wings and just kind of across the board.
Yeah, but their defense has been, or their offense has been trashed for a very long time.
I agree, and I would much rather see McCain out there. I'm just trying to get inside of Nick's
And the
mind.
good thing with Kelly is, look, if the reasoning is you don't want to bench him when he's playing the best basketball of the season, he will give you opportunities and make decisions to bring him off the bench. Like, he is not going to play perfect basketball from here on out. It's just not the nature of his career.
No, he is not. So with him playing a little bit more under control, not forcing things on the offensive side of the basketball for the Sixers, it's a good sign for Kelly Oubre if he's able to go out there and continue to do that, which is why he's probably in the starting lineup as it is. We were also talking about, as you walked in, the Paul George factor of getting used to the brace as you guys were there at the arena talking about that, but he still played an overall really good game. It wasn't explosive 21, but it was a professional 21 with the 9 assists and just going out there playing under control, setting things up. And while Maxey and McCain struggled and KJ Martin lifted the offense with his points off the bench with the 20, Paul George is the stabilizing force that while we've seen it a few times this season, it was really encouraging because of the struggles. It really stood out because of the struggles of Maxey McCain of what he was able to do, even hampered by that brace.
Yeah, and I think the 9 assists are really important to highlight, especially as they apply to Joel Embiid, right? Because we have been talking for the entire length of the company about Joel not scoring less, not because we think he should take a back seat to anybody, but because we think he should be playing maybe a little bit of a lower usage role. And frankly, because nobody wants to see him, Paul George included, having to create all his own offense from the elbows all the time. And so some of those plays that we saw against Orlando on Friday where Paul is, he's got a decent matchup. He's getting not all the way to the rim, but very close to the rim, and then using those drag steps, euros, all that to kind of put the defender off balance, draw a little bit of help, and hit a drop off. That's the sort of thing that you should hopefully be able to get a couple easy baskets for Joel a game and put them in some more actions, maybe run some pick and rolls. I know that Maxey and Embiid already have the built-in chemistry on all that stuff, so you probably want to go to that first and foremost. But if this team is going to realize their potential, it does fall somewhat on maximizing what Paul can do with Maxey, but also what Paul is going to do with Joel in those, 2-man actions, whatever they might be.
I just want to reiterate, those three, Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George, have played 6 minutes together.
6 minutes.
We will
It's
at least double that by the end of
that was Orlando,
knock on
right?
wood.
Yeah. That was the Orlando game when
It
we
was
were
6
at
minutes,
the
man. I can't.
Tiernan Oak. Yeah, that was 6 minutes of the big three, man. 6 minutes of the big three. But look, we get it here now, and this is a 6-15 team playing a 10-14 team where we keep saying it after all these games where we've gone back and we've looked at some of their losses where they've been close games they should have won. This is another winnable game for the Sixers where a defense in Chicago will give up points. And with them giving up these points, they have to take advantage of an opportunity like that, even with them only having 6 minutes under their belt, where when you're all-stars and your star players like that, it should be easier for you to at least, when you say go off script for Kelly Oubre, you go off script and you have a 3-man type of game going on, you can figure it out as great players. And they've talked about that in the introductory press conferences that they had, where great players should be able to pick things up pretty quickly, even in the basic stuff of making it work for their team. And that's something that we should expect here. Even though they're working on it, they should still come out here and show a decent performance with those three on the floor.
Yeah. So, listen, let's hope they can get more than 6 minutes before it all comes crashing down again, right? Because they, as bad as things have been, I do agree with what Nick Nurse said the other night after the win against Orlando. They generally have been playing better recently, and they have looked a lot more like a coherent basketball team, right? And I think, one, just having Paul out there helps. Two, figuring out some lineup combinations that work, and also playing the guys that are playing better, like playing KJ more and giving KJ a bigger role as guys like Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry either play less or play not at all. All those factors are combining to it's at least for us, right? It's been more watchable, which I certainly appreciate. And the defense has given them a chance to compete while their offense catches up. Well, now they have, in theory, on paper, their offensive firepower back. And so this should be, hopefully, there are only so many pieces of wood you can knock on, but hopefully you can continue that and integrate the guy who's the most integral piece of all of it and continue trending upward.
No, I mentioned it in my story yesterday. Over the last 5 games, they have the second best half-court defense in the league. Now, they still have their warts in terms of defensive rebounding.
Yeah.
Opponents are still able to get out in transition, so they're not the second best defense. But in terms of first shot defense, their effort, their communication has been very consistent over the last couple of days. And when you add in the fact that Paul George has stabilized their offense a little bit, they are playing much more consistent basketball. It hasn't been outside of Orlando, which is the best opponent they've beaten all year. It hasn't been against world beaters, but it has certainly been much more consistent, much more watchable, much less aggravating. And now you throw Joel Embiid back in there. Hopefully they can start ramping up towards being a decent team, using ramp in a different context here, rather than what we've seen up to this point.
Look, this is important too because they have 4 days off after today until Friday, where they take on for the NBA Cup losers bracket. They have, today Chicago, Friday Indiana at home. So an opportunity here to play a good basketball game, get some more rest for Joel Embiid, where it doesn't go against you of load management or anything, and he's missing some games and you're picking up losses. You have a couple of days off where you can go all out today for what you need to do and then get that practice time in, which they really don't get a lot of time in, Derek, of practice time, and then get some rest mixed in where Nick Nurse can set that the way that he wants for the week and then play a basketball game at home against the Indiana Pacers.
They might have 3 practices this week. That never happens. We were joking after the game.
In fact, they could even have 4 if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
We were joking after the game. They might as well go to the Bahamas. This is like a mini training camp going on.
We're ready.
Here.
We're ready.
We are ready.
Now, they will pay for this in some way later with back-to-backs and other things.
Yeah.
But this is one of the, if there's a positive quirk for NBA Cup losers, the existence of the NBA Cup basically allows for this, right? Where this part of the schedule is light because they have to be flexible with how they're scheduling all that. So thank you to Adam Silver for giving the Sixers a second training camp in December. Good job.
Yeah. Yep. So with it, you mentioned, Kyle, the KJ Martin piece of, I wonder if he could start, with Joel Embiid coming back, and his best performance of the season. He's played really well, but the 20 points, only missing the one shot, which was a 3-pointer.
Yeah, which Kelly misquoted after the game. He said he the only shot he missed was because he tried to lay it up instead of dunking on people like he had been all night. No, unless there's a 24-foot layup. But I think
layup for Steph, maybe, but very few guys.
I think if you were going to, go back to the Yabu versus KJ debate, I think that shot. Look, KJ has shot I think attempted like 8 or 9 threes over his last 4 games, which for him is a lot. Like he took 1 3-point attempt over his first 7 or 8 games of the season. So to have multiple, 4 or 5 games in a row of taking 2+ threes is huge. But there's a clear difference in Yabu's shot and KJ's shot. And I think next to Embiid, they probably want that spacing there.
Yeah, and Yabu has taught. All these guys go through a progression of Yabu at the beginning of the season. There were teammates, coaches saying, "Yeah, he's been shooting the ball well, but we still have to kind of coax him into getting more shots up." And KJ is at basically that same stage right now. And so I think for integrating Joel back into the team, the guy who's the more immediate, like he can space the floor and we trust he's going to just take shots when he's open. I think that's probably it makes a lot of sense. And frankly, KJ off the bench as that, athlete spark plug type of player also makes a lot of sense.
No, and KJ even said after game the other day, he was like, well, it's one thing to be confident in the work I put in. It's another thing to be confident on the floor shooting, with the implication being that he is becoming more confident, but that it clearly wasn't there to start the season. It's a progression.
All right, let's get to the super chat that we have from Corey here, discussing today's action and yesterday's as well. After Penn State's loss and Flyers collapse yesterday, Philly fans are counting on the Sixers and the Birds to salvage the weekend. Go Sixers and go Birds.
I know which of those 2 teams I have a little more confidence in.
Yes, especially against Carolina. Yeah, especially against Carolina. No question about it.
No, look, this is a winnable game for the Sixers. It's a team they need to beat if they are going to start scratching and clawing and making their way back up the standings, right? Like the Bulls straight up not as good as Orlando, and they beat Orlando Friday and probably should have beat them on Wednesday. Right, that was a toss-up type of game that we don't have to relitigate that one. But yeah, I think this is I have more confidence in the Eagles, but this is a game the Sixers should win.
And I'm not going to talk about the standings. I'll leave that out. We'll do that later when and if they start to climb up those said, not said standings.
That's
Overall. All right, let's get to our best bets of the day on this Sunday afternoon. Our pregame segment. Our pregame segment was going pretty well. Also did a pretty good job on Friday, fellas, once again.
Gambling Givens, baby.
I don't know. The pregame pick segment is brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Full transparency, I put this one together pretty quickly just because we were trying to wait and find out if Embiid was going to be in or out. So went with this one. Bree, let's show the folks of the same game parlay.
Wow.
Over under, Joel, points, assists, and rebounds.
Oh, okay.
33.5.
I thought that was just over on points, and I'm like, you are high on his return.
No.
Even still, I think that's high on his return, given how long he's been out and what we've seen of him so far this year.
What might really get you is a minutes restriction.
Yes.
We don't know exactly what that is.
Yes. But I went with it, lay it all down on the gambling today. Positive. Zach Lavine, low number, over 20.5. He had 30. He's been playing really well over the last couple of games. 21.5 over for Zach Lavine. So I went with the over on that one. Because they do get up a lot of shots. They do score a lot of points, Chicago. They don't play a lot of defense, which is why they score a lot of points. And that is the Gambling Givens early Sunday afternoon number to throw up there. I was going to throw a little football in there, but I left that for Jamie on their show as well. So, again, the pregame pick segment brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
We got some people confident in the Eagles today. Malk says, A.J. Brown, 12 touchdown game.
I mean, that seems reasonable.
That seems like a new NFL record.
Now, if you would have said Saquon, that's a real chance.
Can you get that man some more touchdowns?
I was going to say, I want him to win MVP just because it's annoying that, and I understand why, right? Quarterback is by far the most valuable position.
We do almost need two different awards.
Yeah, it's like it's just boring for it to be the
offensive
player of the year.
Yeah, it's just boring for MVP to be quarterback every year, even though I understand on paper why that's the case.
It is so boring.
Just like
it's so unfair. It's so
that's why
unfair.
I almost think just change it to like best player, but that's player of the year.
Like
I get
most
that.
outstanding player,
because it is defensive player too, right? Yeah. So offensive player and defensive player because
but nobody cares about that.
No,
they care about the MVP.
Yeah. So very, very interested to see how that one goes against the Carolina team that has been playing better.
We'll be watching on DVR later.
I think we are, or checking in on the.
We would we're professionals.
We're professionals.
We would never do that.
We can look at the ESPN play-by-play while we're watching the game as well. All right, that'll do it for us, folks, as we get ready for the watch-along coming up at 1 o'clock. You have multiple ways of watching your sports.
I need you guys to have like 4 screens up.
That's why I'm saying
Birds,
you have multiple
Sixers,
ways
PHLY
of watching
Eagles,
sports
PHLY Sixers.
So all your 4 screens that you like to show us, have them all on PHLY Sports and on the 2 local basketball and football professional games. All right, we're coming back for the watch along here in a couple of minutes, so give us a couple of times to set up, send you out the link. For Derek, Kyle, and Bree, great to have Bree back. I'm Devon. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Sixers and Bulls coming up here shortly, and our pregame show was, in fact, presented by Coors Light. Get your Coors Light ready. Visit CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball to get Coors Light delivered or to find a store near you.
A.J. Brown, 12 touchdowns. Go Birds.
Love it.
We all silly like the mayor.